from WCIA 3 Plus. With Ethan Holesha and Tyler Hill, this is Midwest Mashup.
Welcome in, guys, to the WCIA studios. My name's Tyler Hill. This is going to be our first episode of Midwest Mashup. When I say our, I have a co-host alongside me here. You're going to see him shortly. Boom. That is Ethan Holesha.
How's it going, guys?
You know, Ethan, I think we just, every time we do this, we've done a few practice runs, a little bit of behind the scenes here. Every time I just get more and more excited looking at the graphics, the intro, and we're actually going to get to talk about some teams and some sports we're really passionate about. And that's the big thing here. We're going to be talking about the pro sports teams in Chicago, in Indianapolis, and in St. Louis. So Chicago, obviously, we got Bears, we got Bulls, we got Blackhawks, a lot of B teams there. And then Cubs and White Sox.
Teams, yeah.
You don't really think about it until you say it. And you're like, wait, whoa, I'm sensing a theme here. And then Indianapolis, we, of course, have the Colts, we have the Pacers. And then for St. Louis, we will be doing the Cardinals, the Blues, and then we'll have to make a decision about the Battlehawks. I think we will end up talking Battlehawks just since it is kind of a standalone thing in football there. And I know St. Louis people, you can tell us, but it seems like you guys are very passionate about this UFL team, the Rams leaving and everything. I know that is definitely a sore subject.
Yeah,
but
touchy subject.
You do have a football team, and it seems like you're putting a lot of passion behind it. So we will talk Battlehawks when it gets to that point. But before we get into this episode, we're going to have a lot here. We are getting into the swing of football season. We'll be talking about the joint practices for both the Bears and the Colts, and then their preseason games. Talk a little baseball on the end there. We are getting so close to that prime sports time. I'm so excited. But before we get into all that, the meat of our show, we're going to introduce ourselves. And so, Ethan, going to toss it over to you if you want to tell people like how you got into this, how you got to WCIA, and why you're passionate about this.
Yeah, man. So I was born and raised in Oaklawn, south suburb of Chicago. I've been a diehard sports fan my whole life. Big Blackhawks, Bears, Bulls, White Sox over the Cubs. Nothing against the Cubs, but I mean, I'm just like probably a third-generation Sox fan at this point. Out of high school, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. Went to community college, got into sports writing there. Then I transferred to the University of Illinois, covered sports through the Champaign Room. I got to cover the basketball and football teams. And then coming up on a year here at WCIA, similar to you, and this is just another great opportunity to kind of cover sports and give our opinions here.
Exactly. Me and Ethan did get here at about the same time. I started August 26th. I think you were sometime in September,
yes.
Right? And so we are coming up on that year. Have spent a lot of time in Champaign. I know more about Central Illinois than I ever thought that I would in my life, because I'm from Sarasota, Florida. And so for those of you who don't know, it's about an hour south of Tampa, on the west coast, the Gulf side of Florida, and went to school at Liberty University, graduated May of 24, found a job here. And so, with that, started doing news. I'm a general news reporter here right now, working the night shifts. You can see me at 10 p.m. for our newscasts. And yeah, I love doing news right now. This has been a great first job, but sports is my passion, and sports is where I want to end up. So as soon as we had this digital platform and we're able to get involved and talk about things like pro sports, especially football and basketball are my two that I'm really passionate about, but obviously keep up with baseball and hockey as well. So anytime that you get the opportunity to talk that and we get paid to do this now, like, it is so cool. And so I'm so excited to dive into these teams. That means so much to you guys here in Central Illinois. We noticed, the filtering is, we have mostly Chicago fans, right? That is the dominant ones. But there's a fair amount of people here that are Indy fans, right? Kevin Lighty and Seth Bonehoff, two of our weather people, Indy fans. We have Jared, one of our reporters. He's from East St. Louis, so there's definitely St. Louis fans here. So we're excited.
And Morano's a Cardinals fan as well.
That's true. You're right, exactly. So he's from Illinois, but is a St. Louis Cardinals fan. So we really, I think, are going to get the opportunity to hit all of these teams evenly. St. Louis, you might be out of it here a little bit as football season starts. But again, like we said, we'll circle back with the Battlehawks. So we'll even it out and really, strive to give coverage, or the same amount of coverage, to all three teams, not favor any of them, and really try to hit and know about all of them as much as possible. So we'll show you that right now as we get into the meat of our show. We got a good one here today. There's a lot of news coming out of camp. We'll start with the Colts because I think they're just more interesting, right? Yeah. Between their joint practices, the Bears starters, if you guys haven't seen, did not play in their preseason games. So right now, I think the Colts are where most of the storylines lie. And we'll start with one that I think maybe is flying a little under the radar, and that's the wide receiver 3 battle. So right now, at least as it stands, the Colts are established at Michael Pittman Jr., wide receiver 1, Josh Downs in the slot. And they had Alec Pierce, but Alec Pierce is dealing with a groin injury. He's day-to-day.
Yep.
And A.D. Mitchell has been making some plays, especially in that Ravens joint practice. There's about a 1.5-minute highlight clip that you can check out on the Colts Twitter of him making plays. he looked like the next Calvin Johnson out there just by the highlight cut up, right? And so he does need to take advantage because the one play though in the preseason that stands out to my mind is he like slow plays a slant. Daniel Jones throws it, thinking he's going to be there on time and on target, and he's not. He was not expecting the ball at all, and it almost results in an interception. And I think that kind of encapsulates A.D. Mitchell and some of the frustration because he's got so much potential, but is he focused in on the minor details? I don't know.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great topic for discussion. I saw him make a great deep contested catch in that joint practice. He was talking to the reporters he was calling the DBs burnt toast. We talk about maybe his confidence. He was piecing up those defensive backs in those one-on-one drills, but I almost feel like after last year, he's still getting his feet wet, trying to get that confidence built up.
Which, especially after early in camp, there was a lot of reports of drops, a lot of focus drops, and people were worried for about that first week and a half of camp. So to see him bounce back like that is awesome.
Yeah, because that's what was such a problem last season, too. I'm sure after that first week of camp, people are like, is he just falling into what happened last year? Like, he didn't have many drops or any in college, and they're like, is this just going to be something that we see with him with the Colts? And then after that first week or so, I mean, it's kind of been like the A.D. Mitchell show a little bit at some points of practices. He had a great joint practice, and we kind of thought that would translate into the game, but maybe not so much.
Yeah, and it's tough to tell because, I mean, we will get to it. There were some injuries that maybe threw off the offensive plan a little bit there, but just not a great preseason game, not a horrible one either, but
definitely
was not making the type of plays that we were seeing from some of the joint practice clips and some of the hype that he was getting. But talking about the talent, man, when you look back at his combine, so he had a 9.99 relative athletic score, which for those of you who don't know what that is, it's inputting all of the testing that you do on the combine, and then it's comparing that to everyone at your position group that's done the combine in the history going back to, I believe it's 1985 in the NFL. And so he had a 9.99, which is the fifth most athletic wide receiver ever. So that's the type of athletic talent that we're talking about in A.D. Mitchell. He's got good ball skills, up in the air, like you referenced that play against, I think it was Nate Wiggins, who's a really good corner for the Ravens, and he's making plays on the ball deep down the field. AR's giving him a chance. So if you can just unlock that potential, he's got so much of it, right? Yeah. He is just such a raw athlete that I think he can be a difference maker, maybe in a way that while Alec Pierce is a good player, he's not quite the same level.
Yeah, they're both downfield threats. They could make those catches, but something that was missing last year for A.D. Mitchell, I don't think he made a contested catch. Every time there was kind of like a 50-50 ball, it wouldn't go his way.
It's like a 20-80 ball.
Exactly. And if he could come down with even 50% of those this year, I mean, that's huge. And it seems like he is slowly unlocking some things. Maybe he needs to break some of those bad habits from last year, whatever it is, whether that's mental, being in the right spot, being on the same page as whoever ends up being quarterback. Hopefully, if things go according to plan, we saw the success he had with Anthony Richardson in that joint practice. So it's just going to be interesting. It's definitely it's gonna be a process for sure to see him really hit his stride. But I don't know, from what I've seen, I guess more recently outside of the preseason game, things are trending in the right direction.
I think so. And you did hit on the quarterbacks there, and so we won't hold it anymore, right? This is the big thing for the Indianapolis Colts this year. Is who is going to play quarterback. Is it going to be Anthony Richardson, the top 5 pick that has so much invested in him but has had a ton of injury issues, accuracy issues, less than a 50% completion percentage last year, but they're a lot like A.D. Mitchell is so much potential? Or are we going with Daniel Jones, the veteran brought in, just a 1-year, $14 million contract, really cheap, a guy who is more steady, I guess is probably the word for it when you compare him to Anthony Richardson. But where's the ceiling, right? There really is none. We've seen what Daniel Jones can do playing for the Giants, and I'll put it nicely, it was not a ton. And so when you get into this quarterback competition, it's tough when you're seeing clips and what the media is seeing versus what is going on during all of the practices. But when we look at the joint practice, I got to feel like Anthony Richardson took a little bit of a step there. Maybe didn't win the job decisively, but I think he was better than Jones.
Yeah, I mean, even when you look at the stats from the practice, Richardson was 10 of 13. He was taking some more deep shots. Daniel Jones was 14 of 17. You know what you're getting with him, though. It's going to be some slants, some checkdowns. I don't know. With it feels like Daniel Jones is never really pushing the needle. It's like you said. You know exactly what you're getting with him. I think they kind of knew what they were bringing in. It's kind of like a safety blanket in a way. But you talk about, maybe his floor is higher than Anthony Richardson's. but the ceiling is not even in the same stratosphere, in my opinion.
Yeah. And so some of the quotes coming out, I saw one reporter who said that both of them move the ball at will against the Ravens. So that kind of folds into what we were talking about, where I think both of us feel like Richardson may have won that day compared to Jones, but by no means did Jones play bad, and I think by no means did Richardson just completely take over the job. But I think if you were going to ask Colts fans if they wanted Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, I mean, it's got to be Richardson, right? Because
you have to.
With Jones, I feel like you're just repeating what you did when you brought in, Philip Rivers at the end of the career, Matt Ryan, Carson Wentz, all these guys that were really just stopgap quarterbacks. And even, Gardner Minshew in the year that Anthony Richardson was rookie, won the job, got hurt after a couple of games. Minshew played. Like, these are guys that the bottom's probably not going to fall out on your team. But you also know, like, man, our ceiling's probably 8 wins, 9 wins. And so
your ceiling's a wild card game, probably not even a win. Like, you're sneaking into the playoffs at best.
And I was going to say, and that's best case scenario, right? And so I think when you look at I guess now, even with some of the injuries we'll talk about later, the type of ceiling and type of quarterback play you need, where I don't think a game manager is going to get it done. Anthony Richardson, I think, gives you that in a way that Daniel Jones doesn't. I think he's showing it on the practice field as well. Now, the other guy that I wanted to hit, when you talk about explosiveness, you talk about ceiling. Tyler Warren.
Oh, my goodness.
I mean, just such a stud.
Yeah.
Like, he was everything that he was sold in the draft and more so far.
Yeah, in that joint practice, he hauled in a great touchdown in the 7-on-7 drills. In the back of the end zone, he got both feet in. He's got great body control. I will say Trenton Simpson, the Ravens linebacker, did a good job of kind of limiting him after the catch. But to have a rookie that's already, like, getting a spotlight from defenders, they know where he is on the field. And I feel like come regular season, he's going to be the guy that these defenses game plan for. They're going to be like, we need to know where this guy is at all times.
Yeah, and that was literally a question I had written down is, can he be the number one in this offense? And I really think he can, because he can attack all levels of the field, where he got 33 screen passes as a tight end at Penn State. That's so rare to be throwing screens to a tight end like that. And he had 8 yards per reception on those. So, hey, if we're in a 1st and 10, throw a screen, you get a 2nd and 2. I mean, we are in business as an offense. He also caught over 60% of the contested catches for Penn State, so he can get down the field. He has that rack ability, and I think he really can be that rare tight end that really is the target guy in an offense, where he's getting 22, 23, 25% of the target share, even with, like we talked about, a pretty talented wide receiver core with him. Now,
absolutely,
we've gone over a lot of good news so far, and unfortunately, coming out of the joint practice, there was some bad news on the other side of the ball. And so coming back from the break, we will let you know what's going on defense with some injuries, especially in one position group. Stay tuned. Welcome back into Champaign here in Central Illinois. My name's Tyler Hill again, hosting Midwest Mashup here, talking Chicago, Indianapolis, and St. Louis pro sports. Right now it's going to be a football-heavy episode. We will be doing some baseball at the end, though, for some fans of that sport. But football's king, right? And so right now we are so close to the season. I'm so ready. I'm seeing fall camp clips from college teams, now training camp clips from NFL teams, and I'm so ready to see some football.
I know, me too. Obviously, football is football. I don't know how else to describe it. Just the hype around it. I think a lot of it is there's just not as many games, so everything, like,
it matters so much.
Every game matters so much. It holds so much weight, and I'm ready for football. As much as I love summer, I'm ready for football.
Yep, and our mental health would just be hanging in the balance of some quarterbacks here for the next 4-ish months, depending on how deep we go.
Absolutely.
Now, quarterback is not the only position on the field. You do need to field a defense. They get paid too, and unfortunately for the Colts, defense has looked rough in the past couple days, not even really from a scheme standpoint, but from an injury standpoint. So there's been a couple big injuries, especially in the secondary. So Justin Wally, the rookie 3rd-round pick out of Minnesota, was balling out in camp. The coaches could not stop talking about him, how good he was. He, at least in the first unofficial depth chart that was released, he was the number 1 corner opposite Charvarius Ward, both starting on the outside. So this was a guy who was ready to come in and make an immediate impact. Unfortunately, he will not be able to after tearing his ACL in that joint practice that we've been talking about against the Ravens. It was announced the last Thursday, at a preseason game, that he had gotten tests and he tore his ACL. His season will be over. And before we get into maybe just the questions this brings up in the secondary in general, I think we do need to sit on just how disappointing it is that a guy like Justin Wally, who had gotten as much good news as he did, unfortunately is just not going to be able to prove himself this year.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, 3rd-round pick out of Minnesota. The hype for Wally kind of just continued to build as he continued to dominate throughout camp. Even with the injury, he was walking around in kind of the second half of that joint practice, and he had ice on his knee. I don't think people thought it was as serious as it was. Fast forward to Thursday, it comes out that he tore his ACL. In the first half of that practice, I mean, he looked great. He held up well in coverage during some of the early drills and in the team periods. He was showing good footwork. He showed physicality at the line, kind of everything that you would want and more from a guy like that. And so it's just really disappointing. And with the other hurt guys like Jalen Jones, Juju Brents, you just add them to the list. Who's going to be in the secondary?
That's where it becomes big, is it's stacking in one position group. And
right.
If it was just one, I think this probably is the deepest position on this team in terms of guys that you could play, because with Wally being number one, that meant that Juju Brents and Jalen Jones both were backups, both solid guys that are proven to be not amazing, but can be starter-level players in a defense. But when you start stacking it again, so Juju Brents has a hamstring. Jalen Jones also has a hamstring. Travarius Ward is back, but has already been dinged up at different points of camp this year. And then this, I think, was just coming in yesterday, because at this point you're thinking, can it get any worse? It actually can.
It can always get worse.
Because per ESPN, Stephen Holder, nickel cornerback Kenny Moore II had an apparent issue with his right knee, was in, quote, intense pain. He did follow up and say that it is not a major injury, but there is no timeline yet to his recovery. And so right now what we were sold was, hey, Kenny Moore is coming in, going to be a stud in year one. Travarius Ward is an all-pro level guy. He unfortunately had some personal issues, not of his own or anything like that, just family stuff that is tough to deal with.
Right.
In San Francisco, he can get back to the all-pro level. Kenny Moore is going to be one of, if not the best slot defender in the league. Lou Anarumo loves his DBs. He's going to use all of them. And now it's like, hey, do we have DBs to put on the field?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to look at it. Even looking at other positions, Buckner's been a little banged up. Franklin, obviously, some of those guys aren't really going to get a ton of reps in preseason because we know what they're going to bring to the table. But as far as the defensive backs go, I mean, Hunter Wooler's a guy who they took super late in this draft, and he's kind of been balling out in his own right, which is huge. And they need that. A guy like Alex Johnson, who's been a veteran, he's been playing well. I'm seeing Duke Shelley here on the depth chart. I didn't even know he was on the Colts, former Bear. But it's like the fact that they're going to have to rely on some of these guys who were maybe third, fourth string, or even practice squad level players. It's kind of alarming.
It's your time now. You got to step up and start making plays.
It is, but it just makes you think, like, what is the ceiling for these guys now? There was so much promise with some of these new signings and the draft picks, and now it's kind of just all up in the air. It's a matter of how serious are some of these injuries, how soon can they get back on the field, and can they make it back by week one?
And this is obviously a big deal for any team, like right? I'm not saying anything groundbreaking there, but I do want to hit that for the Colts, because Lou Anarumo is the new DC here from Cincinnati. I think this is extra big because he likes to do a lot of stuff with his defensive back. So whether it's blitzing, and then you got to play a different coverage off of that, it's a defense that relies on the defensive backs, the corners, and the safeties to know where they need to be and know what they need to do really quickly. And if you make a mistake on the back end, that's a blown coverage, and it's extra bad because a lot of times you're sending extra people. There's not as many people there. That's a touchdown instead of maybe a 20-yard gain if you're playing a little more soft defense. So I'm worried. I mean, you would, again, like I said, you would be worried in any scenario for any team if this many people went down, but I think it especially hurts the Colts. And now we need the D-line step up. You talked about Buckner. Latu has had a good camp as well, the first-round pick out of UCLA last year. It looks like he might be taking a step in his second year, can maybe build on that 5.5 sack year in 2024. But you're now putting a lot on them to say, hey, instead of coverage holding up for 3 seconds, it might be more close to 2. And so we're going to need you to get home quicker and quicker.
Yeah, and with some of those third and fourth string talent level guys, you just wonder how quickly they're going to be able to pick up on that, how much they're going to be able to meet the demands of the incoming defensive coordinator. Joe Bacci's a guy that's been stepping up, but due to injuries, he's not a first-string guy typically. He picked off Devin Leary in the joint practice, which was good to see, but it's like all these guys are doing these things now, but when it comes to the regular season and as we're progressing through the preseason, I don't know. It's going to be a learning curve, and I hope some of these backup level guys have the chance to shine, but it's just gonna be tough for them. They're gonna face fits when they face those Justin Jeffersons, Jamar Chases. I mean, it's gonna be hard.
Yeah, even in their division, Nico Collins, right?
Yeah,
is a dude at receiver that you're gonna have to deal with. And last thing on this is, I think I'm sad. You're sad anytime anyone gets injured, but especially I was getting really excited about this defense because of the secondary depth and that what they had. Lou Anarumo, I think, is one of the best defensive coordinators in the league.
Absolutely. Who
just got fired because, unfortunately, he didn't really have the talent in Cincinnati to run a good defense. And so I thought a lot of things were coming together for them this year to where they could be a top 10 unit. And now I just think that is up in the air because of some of the injuries. Now, we're going to be talking Bears here in the joint practice, who also had a very good day defensively. And
you want to talk about defense?
Man, highlights everywhere for this Bears team. They had the Dolphins come up to town to Hallis Hall, and we'll start with just how physical of a practice it was. I don't know how many different reporters for the Bears said, hey, this was a all-caps physical. Guys are hitting. Tyreek Stevenson had a highlight against Jalen Waddle, and I think that's something you really like to see if you're a Bears fan going into the year.
Absolutely. You talk about the Bears fans. I saw Dolphins reporters complaining about the Bears being too physical, saying this was kind of a practice and they were, treating it too hard almost. And I think it was Omar Kelly who I saw say he wanted players kicked out of the practice.
Which, dude, so soft.
Like, what are we doing?
We're playing football, and I get that it is a practice, but honestly, right now, and the reason guys were leading with these joint practices and not the preseason games, is right now more coaching staffs around the league are treating the joint practices as more important than preseason games. And so they're probably just going to be a little bit more physical than you would expect.
Absolutely. Like you said, those joint practices for these coaches, they hold a lot of weight. You have two high-energy guys in Dennis Allen and Ben Johnson. They want to get their guys fired up. I mean, we only have 3 preseason games now. So it's like, everything's kind of accelerated coming up to the regular season. But like you said, I mean, the defense, they dominated. They were picking off Tua. They were leveling guys in the backfield. Jaquan Brisker's a guy who's coming back from injury. He dominated. He picked off Tua, returned it to the end zone, and it seemed like his performance turned the entire session up a notch. He looks super sharp coming off this injury from last year. Byard's a guy that we're bringing in. He also snagged an interception.
Great veteran presence, yep.
And a quote from him, he said, if we play the way we practice today on defense, we're going to be pretty dang good this year. And, man, it was in the 11-on-11s. Terrell Smith, he broke up 2 passes. He had tight coverage. His awareness was great. Byard came out and called him a ball player. So it seems like all these guys are on the same page right now. Even Tyreek Stevenson, I mean, physicality you talk about. He delivered a huge hit to Jalen Waddle.
Yep.
He knocked the screenplay off balance completely. And just them forcing turnovers, forced fumbles, tackles for loss, it was just pure chaos for the Dolphins.
Yeah, you're talking about turnovers there. In the 14 periods that they had, they forced 5 total turnovers, picked off Tua 3 times, and then forced 2 fumbles. Man, I mean, there is just a lot of good things to like with this defense, which if you look back at last year before the Washington game, which is kind of, I think any Bears fan would point to and say, this is kind of where things fell apart is post the Hail Mary. They were a top 10 defense in almost every category that you looked at. And then some things happened, and coaches got fired, and, I'm sure guys checked out a little bit mentally.
Absolutely.
And they didn't end up as a top 10 defense. But if you just look at the roster and how many good players they have at all levels, you look at the defensive line of Montez Sweat, Gervon Dexter, Grady Jarrett coming in, linebackers Tremaine Edmonds is a very good guy to have in pass coverage. And then obviously we talk about the DBs. This is another very deep defensive back room for the Bears. So at every level, they got dudes. And maybe they don't have the star. You don't have you go back and think of J.J. Watt or Myles Garrett right now where he is that guy that you plan around, but they just got a lot of really good, and that's going to make for a really good defense.
And you say dudes, and that's the name that I would use to describe these guys. And this is all without Jalen Johnson too, and we don't know if he's going to be back before week 1. And it seems like these guys are just, the Tyreek Stevensons, the Terrell Smiths, they're stepping up and they're bringing that physicality, and it's like, it feels like it's the attitude of Dennis Allen, a guy that loves his man coverage and just an aggressive defense. And, up until this point, everything from what we've heard and what we've seen in training camp, it's like these guys are bringing the boom and they're they're not laying off. They're bringing the energy where it needs to be.
Bringing the boom. Shout out the Costco guys. Right?
Shout out. When I said that, I was like, we bring the boom.
We see you. We love you. Now, the other thing, I think this is a real big surprise for me. We got 2 more things here with the joint practice, and one of them is going to be Olamide Zaccheaus really stepping up as the wide receiver 3 here for the Bears. I mean, just a guy that was pretty unheralded when he was signed from Washington. You look at him as, he's fine. But, man, the reports coming out of camp is that he has been steady, really as steady as any of the receivers or any of the weapons here for Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams in this offense. And so I think any time that you already have the stable of weapons, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Colston Loveland, Cole Kmet, like we've talked about
Luther Burden,
We're going to talk about it throughout the whole season. And then you get to add a surprise guy like that you brought in on a pretty reasonable contract. I think that bodes really well upcoming for the season.
Yeah, he's building great chemistry with Caleb. Had that 70-yard touchdown on the deep crossing route. He had multiple great catches in the 11-on-11s. He had a great one-handed catch inside the sideline. And I don't know, to start the season, he may be the wide receiver 3 over Luther Burden. Just, he's still got that learning curve coming back from the injuries. And this is just a solid guy, like you said. We know what he brings to the table. Had a career year last year. And just bringing that guy into the mix, it's huge for everybody else on the offense.
And it's a nice change of pace because we think at least that Rome is going to be more explosive. We know DJ Moore can be very explosive. Colston Loveland, same from the tight end position. He had a couple 50-plus yard touchdowns in this joint practice, so shout out him balling out as a rookie, right on Tyler Warren's heels as a rookie tight end.
Yep.
But to have that steady presence, that chain mover, is a role maybe that the Bears didn't have if they didn't sign him. And so I think he fills a great role there. Now, the offense we'll get to after break here was not as crisp, I think, as the defense, and didn't come out as well after this joint practice. And coming right up, we're going to tell you about a former NFL player who is a little skeptical on Caleb after seeing him in this practice. So stay tuned, coming right after this break. Back here at WCIA here with Midwest Mashup for WCIA 3+. You guys are watching, I'm sure, on either Apple TV, Roku, Fire Stick, which actually, if you want to comment somewhere, and we might have to get up an account. I think now as I'm saying it, we should have our personal account, and we'll figure that out. But let us know what you're watching on between those three. Those are, again, the 3 ways that you can watch this WCIA 3+. Catch us on Midwest Mashup, but there are a bunch of different shows. You can watch our normal newscast. There's a lot to tune in for, even if maybe you're not a sports fan. Totally okay. We got some other stuff for you.
Absolutely.
But we'll be talking sports here. So
yeah. So you know what you're getting here.
So we're not hiding it. And I think one of the bigger storylines, I would say in all of sports, not just the NFL, is Caleb Williams. And is he going to fulfill on his potential after, I almost call it a year zero, just the amount of coaching turnover and incompetency that we saw from offensive coordinator fired, head coach fired, promoting, I don't even remember what Thomas Brown was, promoting him to play caller, to head coach, like not a great situation. And so it seems like this is really the year one of, hey, we got somebody in here who's going to teach you and make you a better player. But not everybody is sold that he's going to be that better player. So Teron Armstead is the recently retired tackle for the Dolphins, played for the Saints and the Dolphins. And he said on his podcast, The Set, that Caleb Williams has the number one pick talent. His processing has to improve and fast, saying, hey, can make a lot of the throws, right? Mobile, can move around. But he was saying specifically that he was not picking up a ton of blitzes. And so there were some free rushers and stuff that would have been sacks had it not been a joint practice. And, we have a little bit of time before we get to the actual season and live bullets start flying. But Ethan, when you hear that, is that something that worries you even though we have a couple weeks left?
I think it does, and I do think it's a fair point, though. Even looking back to last season, Caleb held the ball too long. I don't know if something was off with the processing. Not only was he the most sacked quarterback in the league, he also caused the most sacks himself.
Right.
Where whatever that metric exactly was called, but he put himself in situations, whether that be he jumped out of the pocket, kind of jumped back in, and kind of forced the sack himself. We were seeing a lot of that last year. And in training camp, just you bring in an offensive-minded head coach, and it still feels like things maybe aren't where they're supposed to be at this point. You look at the joint practice. He had an up-and-down day. There was some timing issues, rhythm issues, and we talked about how he hit a big play with a guy like Zacchaeus, but at the same time, just too much uncertainty. It felt like
the down-to-down consistency wasn't there in the way that you would like it. I think it's probably a fair way to put it, because you would hope by this point he's maybe grasped more the offense. To start camp, there were some delay of game issues and some false start issues and not motioning the right guys. But Ben said, hey, I'm throwing the whole thing at him, and then we're going to narrow it down from there. I guess what I'm thinking is I would have liked for it to be narrowed down by now and him have a better grasp of it. So we'll see. Again, I think the good thing to keep in mind is that, A, there is time left before week one. And then B, you don't have to come out of the gate just gangbusters, putting up 40 points like the Lions did last year.
Right.
That was the Lions after years of having Ben Johnson with the same personnel, and then it really all came together and they had the year that they had. But I think this may be more than anything. I don't know if I'm worried. I would say it tempers my expectations, though. Like, I was getting really psyched. I was almost going double-digit wins. Hey, Caleb's going to completely turn it around this year. The offense is going to have fireworks, not going to get stopped at all. And maybe this is a good check for me to be, hey, he's still only in his second year. Again, really, I'm kind of treating it like his first year.
I think a lot of people are.
And he's taking in a lot at once. And so giving him some grace here, at least for the first maybe half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, you even see at this time of year, it's a funny time of year as a football fan because you could see 3 straight practices where the guys are just balling out. And then something like joint practice kind of brings you down to reality as a fan. You know,
it's a different level, yeah.
Exactly. And like we said earlier, these practices are very game-like, especially now. I feel like just year after year, they're becoming more important to the players, the coaches, and seeing that he's having these issues when you bring in another team and he's not just throwing against the Bears defense, it just makes you think, and it makes you realize that this is going to be a learning curve despite Ben Johnson being the home run hire. It's like you said, this is Caleb Williams' rookie year part 2 pretty much. Last year there was so much turnover. Obviously, Shane Waldron wasn't having him watch film. It was a whole thing. But looking to this season, I think Caleb's going to make a great improvement, but I think there's going to be some bumps along the road.
Yeah, and we'll give you full season predictions. I believe that's next week's episode that we are going to go full season for both the Colts and the Bears. So you will get more in-depth look at what we think Caleb's going to actually do, some of the stars on this team, and the Colts, what do we think their stat lines are going to look like, and then ultimately the record for the year. So stay tuned for that. That is coming next week. Moving on to the preseason games now, because these were the ones that are fully broadcasted. You were able to watch a lot more of them, even if maybe they don't matter quite as much. We're starting with the Colts again because theirs was a lot more interesting. And Richardson, what has been the number one thing, or maybe number 2 behind the accuracy? Actually, no, I would say number 1. The biggest thing for him has been he can't stay healthy. Yeah. And what did he do? Unfortunately, he looked pretty good in the first 7 snaps. Yeah. I won't lie. So in the first 7 snaps, he went 2 for 3 for 21 yards. I believe they had a field goal by the time that first drive ended, so put up some points. And then I'm going to cue this up here. Then he got laid out by David Ojabo. I mean, unfortunately got rocked, had to leave the game, dislocated his pinky, and coming up here you're going to see it is back in place, and he's already back throwing at camp. So not a long-term thing by any means, but he was slated to get most of the reps. I believe it was a quarter and a half he was going to play, and then they would go to Daniel Jones and then flip it in the next game with the Packers. But that obviously did not happen. And so it's yet another thing for Richardson where you go, man, so much talent, needs more reps, but can't get reps because he can't stay on the field.
Yeah, it just seems to be falling into this pattern, and thank goodness that this was such a minor injury. Yes. I mean, it looked brutal in real time. He was 2 for 3, 21 yards on 7 snaps at that point. And like you said, it's like, coming out of the joint practice, they're like, all right, we're going to roll with Richardson. Everyone's getting excited, but whether it be the shoulder injuries, the knee issues he's had, it seems like there's always something holding him back. And even though this is, a dislocated pinky, they got it back in place. It's just like, when are the injuries going to stop being a factor? It doesn't matter if they're minor injuries, major injuries.
Can we just be healthy?
It's just frustrating. It seems like his career has just been a hypothetical up to this point, and I don't want it for him to fall into that category.
Because that's what he needs the most, right? You can go back to his high school career. He originally was playing receiver. He was playing at a public school in Gainesville, and so they looked at him, and obviously he's an amazing athlete. They have him at receiver, switches to quarterback, then only starts the 13 games in college at the University of Florida, and now is dealing with injuries here. He just needs to play more quarterback. And so it's really hard to do that when you can't play at all, right? And we love practice reps, just not the same as game reps. And so,
up to this point, too, he's missed 57% of his career starts that he, could have played in. It's just like, we're in year 3 now. It kind of feels like this is the final push to either for having him get over that hump or, maybe it doesn't end up working out. But for his sake, for Colts fans' sakes, and for the excitement of football's sakes, we need to see a healthy Anthony Richardson this year.
Right, because I think you said it really well when you said it's a hypothetical at this point. I don't want his whole career to just be a hypothetical of what could have been if he stayed healthy. Now, I will say, So him missing the protection, that Ajabo hit was on him. There's a really good breakdown by Mitchell Schwartz, Jeff Schwartz, and then Kurt Warner all did great videos. You can go check those out on social media. But basically, they were simming a pressure. They sent 3 on that right side. He slid the line to the left.
Yes.
And if you slide the line to the left, you need to be looking right.
On that hot route, yeah.
Right, to be able to dump it off the running back or just know where your blitzer is. You always want to be looking at where that blitzer or that free rusher can come from. He just missed it, got laid out. It happens. But before that, I will say there was kind of an encouraging play, and it looks like just a routine play, but that's kind of what's encouraging. It was that 6-yard choice route to Tyler Warren where he just sits down. I think they're running stick is the play, so the inside receiver, so you have that outside receiver, then one here, close to the line of scrimmage. Tyler Warren was right here. They run an out route out of that middle receiver. He sits down, and he just hits him. And it's just accurate. He didn't ground the ball. He didn't throw it over his head. He just made a 6-yard throw to keep them ahead of the chains. And that's the biggest thing, right? We know he can make the throw that he did against the Texans where he's slipping to the ground, throws it 60 yards downfield, and scores a touchdown. Can he make the layups? And I know it sounds like I'm maybe stretching it, but that was a layup that he hit, and I did find that encouraging, even if he didn't play a ton.
100%. It's the fundamentals. That's what we're looking for with Anthony Richardson. Just with a league low completion percentage, and like you touched on, we know what he's capable of. He could hit the home run ball. He could chuck it 60 yards down the field if he needs to. But yeah, just seeing him get the A, B's, and C's like all in order, and just I don't know. It's the little things. It's really the little things with Richardson. It's the injuries. It's the check down passes, things like that. I don't know. It's encouraging to see, but even with that play of him getting blown up, to see that in year 3 and it's where he's like, that's on me. Those things happen, but it's still kind of discouraging. It's like, this is year 3. Maybe things like that shouldn't be happening, But
right, you would want him to be maybe past that point a little bit. It is kind of disappointing. Moving on, Daniel Jones then ended up taking over after he went 10 for 21 for 144 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks. I think that's just kind of going to be the Daniel Jones stat line, right?
Yeah.
And so really, there were a couple good throws he made. There was one that went for, I believe, 30 yards. It was a good run and catch by, I forget who it was. I think it was number 16. But overall, I rated this performance about a 4 out of 10. I wanted to see it. Did you see anything different, or is that about where you were?
No, I mean, I think 15 receivers touched the ball during that game or somewhere around there. So it is hard to say who caught that ball. But, yeah, I mean, Daniel Jones was Daniel Jones. And I don't really know what that's showing by him doing that. It's like, why not take more home run swings? We're in the preseason. I'm not going to say these games don't matter, but there's no – real repercussions of taking some shots and just maybe, I don't know, stepping out of your comfort zone. You're battling for a quarterback 1 battle here. It's like, if Richardson's out, yeah, you're going to be the guy, but
go make some plays. Take some risks.
I know.
Unfortunately, the NFL defenses are too good. You're not just going to be able to go on consistent 12, 13, 15 play drives where you're just dunking and stay perfect the whole time. That's just really not very realistic. No. And so there's got to be some explosive plays.
And especially in today's game, it's like you need to take – if some of those turn into interceptions or turnovers, it is what it is. But we don't need a guy just throwing checkdowns, having a clean slate but not having any touchdowns or under 200 passing yards in a game. It's just not going to get the job done.
Yep. It's how you end up 7-10 or 8-9. It's not going to get you to that playoff realm that you're trying to get to if you're a Colts fan.
Exactly.
The one last thing, we got 1 minute left here, so we're going to hit this real quick in this segment, but just want to take the temperature on the quarterback battle because I thought an interesting quote came out. Quentin Nelson, the guard, all-pro level player, really, really good player here for the Colts. He says that Anthony has had his best camp ever, and that does, I think, speak volumes of, hey, some of the maturity issues that were, the reporters were saying, hey, is he always in with meetings? He's showing up late to stuff. It's never been a crime thing with him or, anything that bad, but just is he day-to-day really locked in? It seems like he is, and I think teammates are noticing, which would put him a little bit ahead in the competition for me.
I agree. And to hear that from someone like Quentin Nelson, that's just really encouraging. We know from reports, everything we've heard, that he's looking better this year, but it's just going to be a matter of him putting it together for the actual regular season games.
And we'll say it again, staying healthy.
Yes, absolutely.
So coming back here after this break, we're going to hit the Bears preseason game real quick. There wasn't a ton there, not many starters played, and then we're going to get into baseball. It is the sport of the summer that we'll hit coming up after this. We are in our last segment here in Midwest Mashup. 13 minutes left in the show. So thank you for tuning in all the way through. If you are still here, my name is Tyler Hill. Alongside me is Ethan Halesha, and we are wrapping up our preseason/training camp notes here for both the Bears and the Colts. We saved the Bears preseason game for the last one because pretty much none of the starters played, and so not a ton interesting there. But I would say there is not zero takeaways. And so, Ethan, I want to toss it to you for any standouts or anything that you really latched onto for the Dolphins preseason game.
Nothing huge, but Monungai, I think he was serviceable. He was pretty solid. You just see, even at Rutgers, he was a tough runner. In this game, he broke some tackles. He finished with 6 carries for 30 yards, led the team in rushing, which isn't really saying much. He did struggle in pass protection a little bit, and it's going to be interesting to see.
There was a couple highlights of him getting knocked back, especially by some of those Dolphins linebackers and edges.
And his use in the passing game was limited, so it's going to be interesting to see where he fits into there. But I do think that he'll probably end up being, maybe the running back too by the end of the season, which is something that you touched on. Ben Johnson said he's happy with Luther Burden's progress, but says he's still not where he needs to be. He really noted his work ethic and his willingness to learn, ask questions. These are things that fans were kind of concerned about. So to see him locking in, I guess just with the mental side of the game, it's huge.
Because he's got the talent, just got to be able to squeeze all of that talent out by actually doing the things that you need to do, the little details, stuff like that. Yeah. The other thing that I really latched onto was Austin Booker, man. Austin Booker looked good out on the edge. The 5th round pick last year out of Kansas. A guy I really liked. I expected him to get taken in the 3rd round, right? Solidly in that day 2, and he slipped, and the Bears ended up taking him the 5th round. Didn't do a ton last year, but in this game looked amazing. 3 sacks, 7 pressures. You're seeing one of them right there against the Dolphins pretty early in the game, and he had the highest pass rush grade of the preseason according to Pro Football Focus, so was balling out in the time that he got. And I think that's important because we talked about not having a dominant edge rusher, right? The Bears don't have that. Myles Garrett, Montez Sweat is solid, but if he can step up and provide a little bit more juice on the edge, that would be huge.
Absolutely. He had 6 total tackles, 3 of those for loss, 4 QB hits, and the thing is he did all this on 14 pass rush snaps. I mean, he was out there. He was effective. Obviously, coming out of college, the sample size wasn't huge in the 1 year at Kansas.
Right.
He came from Minnesota before that, but he was kind of this huge upside guy who was just a physical beast.
A really raw player,
Yeah, and Johnson, I mean, after this game, he called Booker a menace, which he kind of was out there.
That's a good word.
And it's the perfect way to describe him. Last year even they kind of highlighted him in Hard Knocks, which I watched, and he was described as this raw talent guy who just might be a project for a few years. And to see him kind of start to come into his own, even though it's the first preseason game of the year, I mean, it's very encouraging.
Yeah, you talk about that raw athleticism and size. Coming in at 6'6", 250. That is ideal for an edge, especially the way that Dennis Allen wants to play.
Absolutely.
The other controversy I would say is we talked about how none of the starters played. There were some Bears fans, especially one of the podcasts I was listening to, that were very much not on board with that, wanting them to get game reps or as close to game reps as possible with, you're coming out in your jerseys and just the whole pseudo-game atmosphere that you don't quite get in a joint practice. So where did you fall in that?
I don't love it, honestly, especially with only 3 preseason games now, in today's NFL. I think Caleb needs as many reps as possible before the season starts. He has so many new weapons. He has a new line that he's got to coordinate things with. Whole new coaching staff, different schemes. Ben Johnson's throwing a lot at him. Even today, Bears offensive coordinator Declan Doyle, he came out with a quote. He said, Caleb Johnson needs reps, reps, reps. There's no shortcuts. And to say something like that and then he didn't play in the preseason game, it's kind of like contradicting each other. That's just my take. I'm interested to hear what you're thinking about it.
Yeah, I think I'm okay just because I think, and I would have to double check if they actually said this, but maybe I'm just assuming that they'll play in the 2 preseason games. So I would love to see maybe if they do a quarter next game and then a half in that final game to kind of ramp up. And then also they went really hard in that joint practice. Somebody was saying
that's a fair point.
That Caleb got 32 drop back reps between the team periods against the Dolphins, and that's a lot to throw into one practice. And you can't just always grind. You'll lose it mentally. You're not going to be there completely physically. So you have to pick and choose a little bit. And so at least for the first week, if you want to pick that first joint practice and really ramp up the intensity, I'm okay with it. But if it went to the level where, hey, he's not playing in game 2, and then he's not playing in game 3. We're just going to get to the season. That's when I think I would not be on board with it. But at least for game 1, I think I can get with the program of what Ben's trying to do.
That's a fair point, and I could see both sides of it. You made a good point there. If they're still going really hard in practice, and a joint practice is like a game setting, and it's like you already kind of played this team. Do we have to put you out there again, risk injury? We saw what happened with Anthony Richardson, so it makes sense. I just would have liked to see maybe a little bit from him, just in that actual preseason game atmosphere. It's different than a practice, no matter what way you look at it. But, knowing that he's not up for injury risk during these games, and if he does end up playing a decent amount in these last 2 preseason games, I'll be happy about that.
Yeah, but so we'll be on the lookout here for whether or not he ends up playing, how much, and see if we can ramp up for the season, as Caleb is going to be an X factor for not only this offense but this whole team. So moving into baseball now, we are right in the swing of the races for these divisions.
No pun intended.
You see what I did there? But we're getting down the stretch here to figure out who's in the playoffs, who's getting the wild card spots, division winners, and the Cubs are right in that for the Central, right? But unfortunately right now just slumping post the All-Star break. We talked about it in one of our practice shows, but how we were a little, I don't know if fully disappointed, but just thought they would do more at the trade deadline, didn't, and then now have come out really slow before that, but even after that as well.
Yeah, they came out and they got a starter who wasn't proven, a couple of relief guys who almost felt like second options. I mean, looking at since the All-Star break here, they're 10-11. The team batting average and the runs scored are down. The offense is struggling, like you said. Before the All-Star break, they were batting .256 as a team, 5.3 runs per game. Now the team's down 10 notches, batting .244, 4.14 runs per game. That's a whole run less than where they're at before the All-Star break. Rookie Matt Shaw, he's kind of been the sole bright spot. He's still batting .315, 994 OPS since the All-Star break. But at a time where you're in the heat of the division race, and it seems like the Brewers can't lose. I think they won like 21 of 25 games at one point.
They're hot.
The Cubs are sitting 6 games back, and it's like they're a playoff level team, but to not win the division because you guys are just maybe taking your foot off the gas. I don't know what's been going on, but like you said, the offense is struggling, and this is probably the worst time for that to happen.
And Pete Crow Armstrong, PCA, had a really great start to the season. Unfortunately, just has not followed that up post All-Star break. And so that's, I think, just an example. He's kind of a microcosm of this entire Cubs team that unfortunately just has not kept, like you said, their foot on the gas. They haven't been able to keep that same pace up. White Sox, and firmly not in any type of division race. But there are still bright spots, and especially one rookie that you wanted to really hit on.
Dude, Colson Montgomery. Yeah, so since the All-Star break, he's had 9 home runs. He got called up on July 4th, I believe, right before the All-Star break.
Hey, America's birthday. There we go.
There we go. Yeah, and he's on Sunday, he just had a 452-foot bomb. I mean, he hit it onto the concourse. He's not only hitting the ball, he's hitting the cover off the ball. And when he was in the minors, he had some issues with his swing and where he was positioning his weight. He met with a specialist, and he kind of got his swing down to a place where it needed to be. And I mean, since then, he's just been lights out. He was killing it in AAA. He's using one of these new torpedo bats, which I know is kind of controversial.
Yeah.
But he said he picked it up recently, and he just loves the way the ball's looking, and it's coming off the bat great. The White Sox are actually 11-11 since the All-Star break, so technically pretty much the same record as the Cubs, but from a team that was just kind of down in the dumps, this is not a bad place to be at all.
I think it's the ideal spot you want to be if you are the White Sox. Not only are you getting great performance from the young guys, you're able to sell some of the old guys to get some more prospects that are more on the timeline, and you're playing better down the stretch. So you're getting young talent. You're jettisoning talent that unfortunately is probably just not going to be there for the long haul when you're actually good, and you're getting great performances out of the young talent that you already have. So really ideal situation right here for the White Sox, even if the overall record doesn't reflect it for the season. I think that they're moving in the right direction, which is something I don't think the Sox could say or could have said in a long time.
And they've increased from 1 to 2 home runs a game post All-Star break. I mean, the whole team is really raking. And the whole Luis Robert thing where he wasn't traded at the deadline once again, Chris Getz, the GM, kind of came out and said that they might plan to keep him around for the rebuild. He might be that veteran presence, and since the All-Star break, even though his stats don't really show it, he's been great at the plate. huge defensive guy. He's near the top of the league, and I think he's second in stolen bases since the All-Star break. So he's been great.
And it's a good way, I think, teams, and you see this more in basketball than anything, I think, but when they jettison every single old player to get guys that are only 23 or 24 or younger, and you kind of don't get to build a culture with that because you don't have anybody who's done it before. And so I do like keeping a few guys around that have been around the block, know what to do, and lead some of the younger guys. The Cardinals here, we put them last, I think, at least because I don't really understand where they're at. They're above 500 for the season, but they're fourth in the Central Division, just took 2 of 3 over the Cubs. So yeah, they're in this weird kind of middle ground where they're probably not fighting for the division, but they're also not where the White Sox are in terms of their record and tanking. So a weird one to figure out.
It's very up and down, like you said. They're 10-13 since the All-Star break. All these teams are kind of around 500. The offense for the Cardinals has kind of really struggled. All-Star Brendan Donovan, he's batted 188 since the All-Star break. He did have a nice 2-run double in the 8th on Monday, which ended up being the winning run against the Rockies, but that's only his 4th extra base hit in 20 games pretty much since the All-Star break. It's just weird.
All-Star curse, some are saying, between him and PCA.
Dude,
geez.
I know. It seems like that's really a turning point, and if they can still be on track after that, it's going to be great for the rest of the season. But with the Cardinals, it's like they've won 5 of their last 7, but before that, they were really slumping after the break. So there's conversations of them slipping out of the playoff picture. Now I'm hearing some reporters saying maybe they're going to make a late playoff push. It's like, this is not the place you really want to be in. They're stuck in kind of a limbo.
Yeah, and when we're talking playoff push, the one good thing, I was looking at the next series they have, and 5 of their next 7 series, are against teams below 500. So this is the opportunity
time to capitalize,
to go on a run. Like, hey, if I don't remember if it's 3 games for every single one of these series, but out of 21, can we go 15-6 and just really make a push here at the end? I don't think that's completely out of the question.
I don't think so either, especially taking advantage of the Cubs slumping. The Reds are kind of like one of those teams, too, where they're only a couple games. The Cardinals are only a couple games behind them. And they could use that to their advantage. One bright spot, Jordan Walker's still been showing promise. He's got an 803 OPS since the All-Star break. But, it's kind of just going to depend on if the Cubs are, I guess, get back to that pre-All-Star form, and it's going to be interesting to see where these 2 teams compete in the Central going forward.
Love to see somebody maybe compete with the Brewers here or away.
Someone has to.
Well, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, this is our first episode. We are so excited to continue to do this as football actually gets into the season. We get some actual games, some more meaty things to talk about instead of just predicting. We're still going to be talking baseball, basketball when that comes around. Overall, I don't know how many times I can say it. We are just so excited for this.
So excited.
Thank you for watching this first episode, and have a great rest of your day.